It's Halloween in time, baby! Last year, I took a massive look at the Dracula series, and I had a pretty fun time taking a look at that. It was a little less fun to be attacked by Dracula himself, but all was well in the end. But now, I want to celebrate the spooky season of the year by talking about a series that I personally have much more of a passionate connection to, Halloween. Yeah, that's the title of the franchise. It's just named after the holiday. Now, this is a very weird series with a lot of different timelines and everything, starting in the 70s with one of the most classic films of all time, spiraling into insanity by the 90s, and then also in the 90s coming back, then being dead again, and then coming back now, and then being dead again. Anyway, I will be covering every Halloween movie ever, except for the Rob Zombie ones, and the newly released Halloween Ends, because I just can't cover that right now, but I will eventually. But first, I want to talk about Halloween, the original, from 1978. Now, there have been a lot of movies called Halloween from then, but this was the original. And, yeah, it is my favorite movie of all time. But why is that? Let's get into it.
Where do I even begin with Halloween? I could go over what everyone else says about it, that it basically began the slasher genre, reshaped the face of horror, created a massively symbolic figure in Michael Myers, and spawned tons of sequels with a supposedly confusing timeline, but I'd rather talk about why I love it. It's my favorite movie, period. That's not a term I just throw around lightly either, as it wasn't for a while, but now that I think about the impact it's had on me, I can't really give it to anything else. It has shaped who I am, what I love to watch, and even how I write my own stuff massively, and I can't appreciate that enough. But why is it so good? Well, I'm glad you asked. You see, a lot of horror movies both back then and nowadays rely on extremely cheap scares, sleazy exploitation of violence, and other taboo topics. However, Halloween uses the idea of violence to establish an atmosphere that may just scare you. Interestingly enough, this movie doesn't scare me at all. It didn't when I watched it in 2019, in 2020, and 2021, and it didn't this year either. In fact, the only horror movies that somewhat scared me have been Sinister and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And while I love both of those movies, especially Sinister, as I said in my review of it, Halloween remains far and away my favorite one, even though it's not scary to me. And I think that's indicative of what Halloween demonstrated to me the first time I watched it. Fear is something that the movie uses a lot, but it doesn't only use it to try and scare you, it uses it to create a great atmosphere, and that's something that I also find myself constantly doing and thinking of doing. It's an inspirational tactic where, even if something doesn't effectively make you scared, the idea of fear can craft a unique world that anyone can get drawn into. And that's what Halloween does masterfully. The movie has a lot of everyday people as characters. Other than a killer who embodies pure evil and his doctor who's gone absolutely crazy, everyone in the film is your average Midwestern human. From little kids getting scared of the boogeyman and getting picked on at school, to high schoolers trying to have fun, every scene feels like a slice of life from the time, perfectly relatable and down to earth, and the fear comes from the force of evil creeping in on innocence. The archetype of the final girl may be seen as played out by this point, but it's a very necessary device in this film thematically, as Laurie's innocence and attempts to simply have fun and continue on with an ordinary life are relentlessly attacked by pure terror and evil. Fall's atmosphere specifically is absolutely perfect in this movie, and literally every scene outside, even though it was filmed in spring in California of all places, feels like the quintessential Halloween scene. I watch this movie every year in fall, partially because of that reason, and I think that relatability helps it to be even more rewatchable than a lot of my other favorite movies. Cringy dialogue, slightly dumb actions, and tomfoolery all help to bring the teenage characters to life. The writing is perfectly crafted in order to draw you into a boring, everyday place where no excitement is to be found. Yet gradually, the most horrific, memorable set of killings ever put to the silver screen take hold until it's too late. I'm reminded of the scene in which Laurie's at school, getting a bit distracted by what's outside the window, which turns out to be Michael, while the teacher is discussing a passage that dives into fate and how it's inescapable. We can see from this scene alone that the distractions provided by the unfamiliarity of what our fate may be can often drive us to ignore its true contents. She is only partially listening to the teacher, being distracted by Michael's outer appearance, though she has absolutely no clue what his presence means for her future life, and, as a result, inescapable fate. So many scenes have Michael essentially teleporting or disappearing in the blink of an eye, and it keeps us guessing whether he was really there, or if Laurie simply saw something. We aren't shown the exact details of anything, really, which is very good. Evil is inexplainable, it cannot be understood, and this movie perfectly conveys that. Michael is practically dead, and as Loomis says, he's no longer human. He simply exists as an emissary of pure evil and death with no humanity to pardon him of his sins. Loomis's speech gets this exactly right and tells you everything there is to know about the character of Michael Myers, and why he's more of a force than a character at all. Speaking of which, Donald Pleasance as the character of Dr. Loomis does a phenomenal job throughout, giving off so much desperation and emotion as he tries his best to stop Michael, but at the end of the day, he knows he can never do so. He keeps reaching out with the hope that evil can finally be purged, but he knows it'll always live on. As we see in the few death scenes, there is very little gore and very little fanfare. It is simple brutality at its finest with no holds barred. These deaths don't simply occur though. There is a ton of strong build-up with dozens of suspenseful, intense scenes that keep you on the edge of your seat, waiting until the terror will finally strike next and erupt. It makes you as a spectator wonder as you may find yourself eagerly awaiting the next intense, exciting death scene, though morality would have you believe that excitement over the death of another human is horrible. Perhaps there's a bit of pure evil in all of us, and it simply wouldn't let go of Michael, and the thought that it can randomly latch on further is nothing short of harrowing. The final 20 minutes involve Laurie finding the bodies of her friends and being chased by Michael Myers in one of the best chase scenes in any film. All of these locations that have been slowly set up through the film become familiar, though they are distorted by Laurie's newfound urgency that requires different reactions from the same environments. It continues to build and build with each false ending, Laurie's naivety digging its claws into her security every time Michael gets up, and a new batch of iconic, intense scenes are delivered until the final few shots ring out and you think it's finally over. However, the movie sticks true to its themes and has Michael get away one last time, escaping into the night with one of the greatest cliffhangers of all time, leaving us with shots all over the previous locations and not a sound but Michael's cold, mysterious breathing to accompany them. This is the best movie I've ever seen in any genre in my entire life, and I love it more than any other as well. It's truly exceptional in every way, and I wouldn't even be the same person that I am now without it. Thank you, Halloween. If there was ever a movie that deserved a 5 out of 5, it was this one.
So I've been reading up on Halloween 2, the sequel to this movie, which we'll be taking a look at next, and what's interesting is that the director of the original, John Carpenter, didn't actually want to make a direct sequel about Michael Myers. He wanted to take it in an anthology direction and do a new story themed around Halloween every single time. But he was sort of forced into it. That's an interesting story. The creator of a successful indie movie being forced into changing what the sequel is because of constraints outside of his control. Never heard a story like that before.
While the first entry in this franchise was a groundbreaking, resounding achievement that I will never forget, the sequel is much more commonly dismissed, even by fans of the series. It's a strange case where, even though everyone can admit it's one of the best sequels, many still claim it's a bad or mediocre movie. However, I think that's crazy. When I first watched the movie, I actually liked it more than the original for a short period. But just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original Halloween grew on me more and more day after day, until I was obsessed and in love with it, while the second just remained a fun, enjoyable time. It did, however, manage to keep my interest in the franchise rolling, and I watched the majority of entries in the series after that point as a result. Even if you think this movie sucks somehow, you must admit that the opening is absolutely exceptional. Loomis's delivery of the line, "You don't know what death is filled with such urgency, but simultaneously a hint of wit that kicks off the movie and opens up a perfect opportunity for the beat of the new, incredible main theme to drop. It's perfect. Michael goes all over the town for a bit during this movie, while Laurie is stuck being treated in a hospital. A lot of the hospital scenes are pretty boring and feel repetitive, such as how there are way too many scenes where this one medic visits Laurie at her hospital bed. It's not interesting and it's very slow, and while that does build a suspense just like the original did, it doesn't have down-to-earth, relatable conversations filling the gaps to make it flow nearly as well. There isn't a lot in the direction of theming. It's more of just the first movie, but not nearly as interesting in providing a complex narrative, but rather, there are just tons of memorable, cool moments that make the movie worthwhile. And I'm perfectly okay with that. Most horror movies can't manage to be in-depth with their stories, but if they have some standout scenes, that's fine by me. Using the hospital as a central location rather than the suburban areas of Haddonfield is an interesting idea and creates a more hopeless, isolated atmosphere, especially with almost nobody around other than a skeleton crew of staff and Laurie, which achieves an almost dreamlike feeling. This fits well with the new song of the movie, Mr. Sandman, as it really just has this subtle, low drone throughout, and despite the many horrific, brutal kills, remains just as effectively deliberate as the original in many respects. As I said though, this is a movie about good moments and bad moments, with similar characters who really don't get much better or worse aside from the idiot cop who stands over Michael's unconscious body and gets himself killed, who I hate, and most of the same strengths at its core as the first film. What your opinion will really boil down to is how many of the biggest scenes you found fun. I hate this movie's first kill, which is incredibly cheap and almost laughable with how lazy the execution is. Other bits such as the nonsensical, unwarranted Ben Tramer scene just left me scratching my head, and at points it really feels like this movie was just stretching for time, but not in a very smart way. However, there are far more incredible moments throughout versus the security guard's death, which has some great slow build up and a fake out ending which allows for the true jump scare to be much more creative and surprising. It's awesome. Michael kills someone with a hot tub in one of the hardest to watch, most horrific scenes in the whole franchise, which at the same time is incredibly creative conceptually. And speaking of hard to watch scenes, there's one part with, well, needles, and let's just say this scene single-handedly made me afraid of needles with how Michael uses them. Finally, there's the kill of the nurse, which is just watch. Yeah, this is a great part that launches into yet another one of the best chase scenes in film history. There are some points where Michael's slow pace feels overdone, but overall it's incredibly intense with so many close calls and creative environments that surprise us. While the chase from the first movie was great because it used established areas to make everything feel like a satisfying culmination of all that it had been building up to, this one uses the lack of familiarity in this hospital to keep you on your toes just as much as Laurie is in the film. There are also two more notable parts near the end of the film. The first I have mixed feelings about. It's revealed that Michael and Laurie were actually brother and sister, and that Michael is now coming back to finish killing off his other siblings. It's an interesting idea and a satisfying, mostly cool explanation in its own right, but first off, why would he not also end up killing his parents? Well, unless they're already dead. And second off, This kind of damages the entire point of Michael Myers. Michael is not meant to have a motive, he just kills. He just does these things and we'll never understand why, because we'll never understand evil. That's all there is to it, so the general concept of adding an explanation is dumb and unnecessary to me. I get they needed some sort of big twist, but honestly, even though this movie feels warranted for the most part based on the cliffhanger from the first one, that does not excuse tearing down the status of your main antagonistic force. But there is a riveting finale where all kinds of crazy stuff happens. Laurie shoots Michael's eyes out, Loomis blows Michael to smithereens, and Michael walks out while engulfed in flames. It's really awesome and puts a great bow on this flawed, yet enjoyable, fun, and interesting movie. Some of the best scenes in the whole franchise are here after all, and though not everything is done as amazing as one may hope, it's definitely a standout in this series and really great. 4 out of 5.
Hi, I'm WalterTheGermanyBall. Did you know that we have knives? Michael Myers says so, and so do I. We definitely have the best knives on the market that, for sure, do not have any sick person blood on them. I swear to God, they have no blood, or the blood is from a healthy person. It's not sick person blood. Yeah, like I said, we don't have sick person blood on our things. You know, and if you do get it, if you're one of the unlucky few, you will get this Michael Myers Halloween movie that everyone loves, so famous, such an amazing movie, for free to make up for it. You're not going to get these kind of deals from the big chains like Knife Emporium, so you got to stick with our product. You're 99.1% sure not to get sick person blood on it, and if you're part of the unlucky 0.9%, you get this great movie. Everyone loves this. Everyone loves Michael Myers, international superstar. You know, and God damn it, Michael. That's the one Halloween movie you're not in. We've gone over this 1,000,000 times!
Halloween was, at this point, a very established slasher franchise with a specific formula. I think everyone was expecting yet another Michael Myers bloodbath when Halloween 3 was on the horizon. However, they got something much different and much more, well, unique, I guess. You won't be disappointed if you look at the film purely for its style and presentation. John Carpenter returns for yet another incredible synth-heavy soundtrack that helps the entire movie to maintain a specific tone. It allows the stylistic choices made mostly in the visual department to really stick out. We begin with a brutal, gruesome, and dark opening that gives us mysterious shots among desolate, stealthy set pieces to establish the mood of horror and Halloween in a brand new way. It is, however, broken up by this movie's issues quite abruptly and immediately. Once the first kill occurs, it is clear how cheesy and cheap this movie feels, despite having way more ambition than the other two films before it. While those movies acknowledged their lacking resources and created a simple yet effective horror story around it, this one reaches for the stars but barely even gets off the ground. It's a unique idea for a murder, and the way it's done keeps us guessing, but it's done in a borderline laughable way. Moving into the main chunk of the movie, we have the worst characters to disgrace the Halloween franchise thus far. The protagonist is an unlikable, useless jackass who cheats on his wife and moves around like some sort of super spy despite his old age and average physique. It's a hilarious dynamic where he has a family that doesn't even ever play a real role in the story, a mistress who plays a terrible role in it, and very few connections to anything else. He's an awful main character and character in general, which already puts a sour taste in my mouth. There are still stylish, intriguing bits like the, granted, annoying song that constantly plays in the background, having Halloween slowly creep up on us as a terrifying outburst of evil, and the hospital scene, which is absolutely bombastic and one of the highlights for sure. But on the inside, this movie has no clue what it wants to do with itself. Halloween 3 does have a pretty great, intimidating villain with some confusing though sinister and interesting motives, that help the movie out of total and absolute pointlessness in the second act, but that's where my positives end. I do kinda like how creative and brutal they get with the kills, but at a certain point, it also gets to be really over the top. As far as negatives go, there are so many more. The explanation for what the villain is doing is convoluted and, yes, unique, but so dumb. He wants to use his popular Halloween masks to send signals into the tags during a TV broadcast and kill millions of kids worldwide as a sacrifice to the devil, which is an admittedly cool concept, but the logistics behind it are almost impossible to make believable. He somehow stole Stonehenge, yes, Stonehenge, and brought it to California in a ridiculous plotline that requires such an immense concentration of your suspended disbelief to make any sense, and is then killed off in one of the funniest, most confusing deaths in horror movie history. There's then a forced twist to pad out the movie in which the main character's unlikable, boring mistress was swapped out with an android, which is also quite convoluted and serves only as a dumb scene that keeps going and going. The ending, though, is amazing. We are left on a cliffhanger where the main character desperately begs that the telephone operator stop the broadcast, and we never know what happened. That is what I like about the movie. The cool, unique atmosphere and ideas make it a lot more creatively rich than the other horror movies from the time, but at the end of the day, its embarrassingly stupid plot, awful characters, and cringe-worthy scenes hurt it too much for me to truly consider it good. I respect it for being original, but I do not like it one bit. 2 out of 5.
Michael? Michael, where are you? Michael! Oh my god. Oh my god, he's dead. He's dead. I got something that might help. Michael, I have money for you. Michael! Oh! You want the money? You want the money? Yeah. Yes! He's back! Let's just hope the film studios don't take note of this tactic.
After a decade since the original The Halloween series needed to get back on track. Or at least that's what some studio executive said to try and hide the fact that he just wanted to resurrect the franchise for the sake of money. But whatever, bring it on. Halloween 4: The Return of Michael Myers is a movie that by no means needed to happen, but I still really enjoy it. The opening of this movie is the best of the entire series, with the ominous fall and Halloween atmosphere, and throughout the entire film this tone is kept consistent and displayed in a great way, making it a surefire watch for every Halloween season alongside the first 2. In terms of the characters, this movie is also quite a success, as there's a very solid family dynamic shown off at the beginning, and as it goes further, we get a lot of focus on the main character of Jamie and her foster sister Rachel, who are both some of the most memorable, best characters in the entire Halloween franchise. You seriously root for them the whole time, just as you did with Laurie, which adds a ton to the overall film. Jamie's actress specifically does an incredible job for her young age, and really sells everything. An unlikable main character is something that plagues around half of the bad movies in this series, while not really even having one plagues the other. But this movie certainly isn't in that group, in my opinion, in part because of Danielle Harris's excellent performance. Loomis returns once again. Yes, I know he got blown up, just go with it. And he's still a legend. He gives his best performance in the entire series in this movie, this time being a totally crazed lunatic who matches the insanity of Michael, and every line he delivers is full of complex thought and emotion. He's perfect, and alongside Rachel and Jamie, there are a lot of great characters to connect with that make this stand apart from the other horror films that were popular at the time. For example, when he's informed of an accident where Michael escaped, we can see he gives a slight smirk to imply that he knew all along, as he's learned the tropes of horror and Michael's invincibility inside and out, and, just like Laurie in a film that we'll discuss later, won't have any of it. Michael, on the other hand, is really weak in this film. Not only is his design awful and cheap looking, but he really doesn't have that many intimidating moments, and feels less like a force of evil and more like a regular human killer. There are memorable bits, such as the kill where he stabs someone with a gun, but it's nonsensical, and the way it's shot confuses me to this day, even though I've seen the movie 3 times. The chase scene on the roof is great and very intense, and the moment where he kills the sort of hateable jerk that is Brady does a decent job of giving that character some final redemption and is a dramatic confrontation, though slightly contrived. In general, that applies to a lot of this film, such as the explosive gas station car fight and final car chase scene. Both of these scenes are absolutely awesome and well done in nearly every way, but have 1 or 2 small details that leave them feeling a bit more iffy and unrealistic. Halloween 1 didn't kill Michael, but confirmed that bullets won't work whatsoever, while 2 tried to end him with an explosion. But this movie does something truly hilarious. They kill him with bullets. I know it isn't a big deal because they obviously plan to have him live, and the people dealing with him in the scene apart from Loomis had no clue how powerful Michael was, so it makes some sense, but I just find it funny how they use the one method to kill him which the original film explicitly ruled out, and not to mention the use of slow-mo in this part is so excessive that it becomes comedic. But in the end, this movie blocks out many of those flaws with one of the best cliffhanger endings in horror history. The first film was the most impactful, but this is one of the most clever. We see the main character of the movie, Jamie, snap and try to kill her stepmother with a pair of sisters, just as Michael did right around her age. I think it's a great idea to have her become the killer, or to end the series with the chilling thought that Michael's spirit will never leave this earth. But if either of those was their intention, then they should have given Michael a more conclusive death. So yeah, Halloween 4 isn't a perfect movie, but it does a fantastic job of having likable, sympathetic characters, a brilliant atmosphere, memorable though flawed action sequences, and a good twist to end it all off, all of which more than make up for its shortcomings, specifically with not being necessary at all to the story of the overall franchise. But in general, I think it's a great movie, and I'd gladly give it a 4 out of 5.
Now, in Halloween 5, the next movie of this series, there is a questionable opener in which Michael Myers stays for a year in the house of some hermit. But to me, that's unrealistic. Here's how I imagine it going.
Give me rent.
I mean, come on. You can't tell me that's not more realistic than what actually happens.
Well, if you couldn't tell, they had Michael live. I have mixed feelings about this since it makes logical sense that he could survive those bullets based on what the original movie established, but it also ruins the twist from the last movie. So overall, it's a poor decision, and it really makes this movie somewhat horrendous from the start. The very first part of this movie is already atrocious, as we see Michael stay in some hermit cove for a year, as I just discussed, then kill the guy in such a bizarre, unbelievably stupid scene that comes mere minutes into the runtime of this filth. Then we get reintroduced to Jamie, who has been transformed into a mute child traumatized by everything that happened to her, meaning the most likable character from the last movie can no longer talk. And that would be fine if it wasn't all reliant on her dialogue and her innocent nature, and you could still represent that non-verbally. But this movie doesn't even try doing that. She's just a tool for the story and not really a real human character anymore. And it makes no good use of Danielle Harris's clear talent. It's a mockery. In general, the movie feels totally aimless. There's not even really a main character, for God's sake. Jamie doesn't appear that much compared to last time and doesn't speak until near the end when she can magically talk again, which is dumb and also quite insulting to people who are actually incapable of speaking. Loomis sort of serves as a protagonist, but they've taken his actions so far that you can no longer really feel sympathetic to him or want to follow along with him. and no one else even comes close to being memorable or drawing us into the story with them. Rachel gets killed off, which is a terrible idea, and she gets replaced with one of the worst characters in horror film history. No exaggeration. Her friend, who I think is named Tina, is an annoying scourge on the franchise that does nothing but waddle around like a moronic clown, make grating noises, and irritate both the audience and everyone around her. She literally has no characterization apart from desperately trying to be funny, which she never achieves, by the way. The tone is all over the place, along with the pacing, as without a main character or true through line with everything going on, it's hard to feel like this is a connected, substantial, and complete movie, and instead, it more gives off the impression that you're watching 10 different low-quality Halloween fan movies. Very little build-up is yet another problem here, as things just sort of start, and once again it destroys all the chances this movie ever had for feeling proper and complete. As I said, I hate the characters, and aside from not knowing who the hell the protagonist is, all of the side characters are either the worst, most irritating things you've ever tried to watch, or if you're really lucky, just forgettable and boring. Even Michael is still weak as hell, but his version from Halloween 4 looks like goddamn Gus Fring compared to this buffoon. There are absolutely embarrassing, unwatchable scenes, such as the one in the car where Tina is talking to Michael and being just, oh god, I want to punch through the screen and kill her! Thank you, Michael! In addition to this, the Cookie Woman scene is one of the funniest things I've seen since A Certain Death in Halloween Kills, and the part where the two kids are running from Michael in a car is also very funny because it's simply impossible for anyone to think that two little kids could outrun a speeding car trying to run them over. And trust me, I would know. I have experience. The ending is also terrible, and the twist is rushed, lame, unearned, and dumb in every conceivable way. Yeah, screw this movie. It has one good scene in the laundry chute and one excellent line from Loomis.
I prayed that he would burn in hell, but in my heart, I knew that hell would not have him.
But outside of that, there is absolutely nothing. Zip, zilch, nada about this movie that is not a living, breathing trash fire. 0.5 out of 5.
Yeah, Halloween 5 was pretty terrible, but the next movie in the series, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, tried something quite different by involving a cult. Yeah, it's really weird stuff. But as you can see, Michael is dead again. And I tried everything to bring him back. I even tried money, but nothing worked. And I really need him back after the whole hepatitis outbreak that I sort of caused. But after watching Halloween 6, I have an idea. Finally, he's back again, ladies and gentlemen. But you know what? Walter the Germany Ball and cults? This sort of reminds me something. I don't know what, though. Oh. Paul. Hello.
This is one big boy critic, the guy you still owe for that Dracula movie. I hacked into your phone so I could steal money from your bank account, and overheard your difficulty recounting this. I think I should just straight up tell you, since you're having trouble remembering. This reminds you of Parallel, remember?
So do you just listen in on what I'm saying all day long?
Yes I do.
Well, in that case, I still don't have any recollection of that. I think you're going to have to rephrase what you're saying.
I'm not doing it this time, Walter. My voice is too tired, Walter.
Yeah, just let the man have reminded you, and move on to the next movie, Walt.
I agree. You know what he's talking about.
No, I don't, and I'm sick of... Wait. How are all of you even hacking into my phone? It seems like I need today's sponsor, NordVPN.
Fine, I'll say it. It reminds you of the greatest book of all time!
Okay, now that you've jogged my memory properly, I'll move on.
As I said, this movie, Halloween 6, involves a heavy cultist plotline. It opens with a disturbing scene of a woman giving birth amongst these cultists, and their relatively effective imagery, as well as a creepy, unsettling speech from one of them, sets the tone quite well, in my opinion. The opening as a whole is decently effective at the very start, if awkward and cheap feeling. It is an interesting way to hook the audience. Until the actual main portion of the movie starts and completely craps all over it. As soon as the real film kicks off, any chances of this being anything but yet another train wreck are thrown off of a cliff. It's revealed that the girl giving birth is actually Jamie from the last two movies, now played by a totally different actress, and killed off very quickly. It's a total shame that one of the best characters of the entire series was thrown away like this, but that should simply act as foreshadowing for what's to come. It doesn't make any sense why Jamie calls a radio station accepting calls on Michael Myers and not, oh, I don't know, the police? But it doesn't matter too much because, as I said, she's just thrown to the side in favor of different protagonists. So, who could the film possibly replace Jamie with as its likable, amazing main character? Why, Tommy Doyle from the first movie, of course, and he's even played by Paul Rudd. What a great step! And how does the film introduce this incredible returning character who's going to give the trilogy a conclusive finale? By having him stare at a woman trying to change clothes like a goddamn pervert. Not only does his introduction make him rival the doofus from Halloween 3 for most unlikable main character in this series, but his acting is horrible. Paul Rudd is quite good in other roles like Ant-Man, but here he's a boring, emotionless moron who is never once likable or interesting. You never root for him, so there's once again a disconnect between the film and the audience. But to be fair, the other characters could easily make up for this misstep. We're introduced to a family living in the old Strode house with a focus on the eldest daughter. Well, I don't mean to sound like someone who just loves to complain, but the entire family is also full of horrible characters. Dad is an abusive piece of trash, the mom is purely nothing, the son is a moronic douchebag, the main girl is forgettable half the time, and the other half acts like Debbie Downer, and her son is also just emotionless and acts like a robot. It's like if Heavy Rain was a Halloween movie. It contains themes of domestic abuse in these scenes, but it's done in such poor taste due to the lousy, foul execution of the entire ordeal and the pure lack of any soul in any part of the movie. Loomis also comes back, but he's got very little to work with, and the overall film is so messy that he can't even manage to stick out from the sea of nonsensical scenes strung together with a tenuous thread. The entire plot of this film is to explain Michael's killings with this cult, which is conceptually and visually interesting, but the idea of diving into Michael and sucking all the mystery out of him is terrible. The entire point of him is to be mysterious, as I said, so this is just idiotic. This is really just a theme throughout the movie, as scenes like the laundry kill, the red rain falling from a tree, and the hospital massacre sound great on paper, but are carried out in some of the worst ways imaginable. Overall, the movie just doesn't know what to do with itself, and this is exemplified by the real reveal of the cult, which is totally laughable. There's no explanation on how the cult works, why it exists, how and why in God's name Dr. Wynn from the first movie, you know, the guy who was in one scene for like 20 seconds, got involved with it, and how it's so perfectly concealed, which ends up just making the entire plot in the third act feel like some sort of crappy fan fiction. There's an overabundance of annoying slow-mo and flashes in this part too, and the editing causes scenes like the hospital chase to just feel hilarious. The entire plot with Michael also doesn't make sense here. Why would he massacre all the cultists if they were meant to be controlling him and guiding his entire goal? But then again, why are there embryos everywhere in the finale? Why does Michael bleed green? Where does the baby even go after Tommy injects Michael with a needle? How does Danny get a hold of it? How does a beating with a pipe and some injections kill Michael after he's been shot 1,000,000 times and lit on fire? And why does this movie exist? I don't have a ton of stuff that made me absolutely infuriated when watching it, like Halloween 5, but it's a terrible movie in nearly every way. There aren't nearly as many terrible things about it as some of the other bad films in this franchise, but there's absolutely nothing good about it, which is really impressive. 1 out of 5.
Michael, I don't know what to do. Our newest commercial didn't convince people to buy our product. What do we do? Oh my God, you're a genius! We should indeed rip off something that's popular among the kiddos. But what could we do? Well, we could do crippling economic instability. No, I got it. Social media. That's how we reach the youth.
Well, if it's broken, fix it. The Halloween series clearly needed salvation after 2 embarrassing flops. So along came Halloween H20, H2O, to bring it back, and overall it did quite a good job. I really don't have a lot to say about most of this movie. The first 2 acts are effective, but don't do that much very well. Trauma of Laurie Strode after dealing with the events of the first 2 movies, and only the first 2 movies, is shown off in a very impactful way that gets us to sympathize with her. And though none of the other characters are anything special, I don't want them all to burn in hell like those from 5 and 6, so it's a step back in the right direction. It really feels lacking in the Halloween and fall atmosphere, probably because it goes too deep into the Scream style and feels like a real Hollywood horror movie, which I'm not a fan of. You can argue that it's impossible to achieve the same mood while being in California and on a college campus, but that's a terrible argument because, first off, they could have had it take place anywhere else that would have been better for the Halloween season, and the original was literally filmed in California, so it's just an issue with the movie. There are quite a few lazy fake-out jump scares to keep things engaging, but overall very little even happens in the first 2 acts that's worth mentioning. It's pretty boring, but there's quite a bit of set-piece variety, and the acting is all great, so that keeps things relatively okay. But once the dumbwaiter scene finally comes along, things start to get good. This is a great moment and kill that cements Michael's awesome level of power in this entry, despite the fact that he looks so dumb. It's followed by a chase between Michael and Laurie's son and his girlfriend, which is quite effective. It makes no sense how quickly Michael gets from point A to point B at times, but it's not on the level of Jason Takes Manhattan or anything. The gate scene at the end of this chase is especially fantastic and legitimately quite scary. It leads to Michael and Laurie coming face to face in an iconic moment, and an absolutely amazing finale ensues. Is it the best finale of the series? No, but it's up there. In general, I'd say Laurie's boyfriend's death and the ensuing battle is what makes this entire movie. The part where Michael comes down from the ceiling is a bit dumb, but Laurie is shown to be an incredibly smart character who fights against every single trope and yet still delivers a tense finale where they constantly struggle to stay on top. It's not clearly telegraphed at all who will win, and the fight just keeps twisting and turning in so many brilliant directions. The ending is also one of the best of any horror movie ever, where she refuses to let him get away with another cliffhanger ending, crashes a car to pin him down, and finally chops his head off. It's so nice to see what I always want the characters to do to these supposedly immortal killers actually be done, and to cap off such an exhilarating final fight. This is an amazing third act, that really makes the movie worth seeing, even though it drags its feet until then a bit too much. All in all, though, it gives the story of this series such a conclusive and satisfying ending that I can't bring it below a 3.5 out of 5. Oh, is that right? I think we're live streaming right now. Alright. Yo, what's up, guys? It's your boy, Secret Child Groomer here, and I would love to talk to you guys about my favorite new product, knives. Now, I've gotten a large fan base since my last video talking about SpongeBob SquarePants toothpaste blew up. SpongeBob SquarePants toothpaste to clean my teeth! But now I just want to talk about these knives that definitely don't have any hepatitis blood on them. And they're even Michael Myers approved. Wait, hold on a minute. Someone sent a video reply. This is my favorite new thing. Let's check out what they said.
Dude, Michael Myers is dead.
Wait, what? Again? I just brought him back. How is this even possible?
Yeah, man, he's not cool anymore. We're all into different types of criminals now. Like meth cooks. Unsubbed.
No. No, you can't do this to me. No. No! Somehow, Michael Myers can survive anything. He can even survive being decapitated. Yes, that's right. They made a sequel to H2O, H20. It's still a dumb name, and as you can probably imagine, it's god-awful. Not only is it an unnecessary entry that makes no sense in terms of existing in the first place, but it's also a total mockery of the franchise, and with how garbage many points in this franchise are, that's really saying something. So the explanation for Michael coming back this time is that he crushed the larynx of a paramedic, put his mask onto his face, and Laurie thus ended up chopping off an innocent man's head. I'm speechless. They've done it. They've created the stupidest excuse for resurrecting a movie character I've ever seen. First off, why would Michael do this? Yes, he's quite smart, but there's no way in hell he can see into the future to know that Laurie would be in a position to kill him, especially considering that he would have just been in a body bag being driven away if not for Laurie's refusal to fall into typical horror tropes. So under any logical circumstances, he would have assumed that he could just kill the medics in the ambulance, get out, and then attack Laurie when she's not expecting him to still be alive. I find it ridiculous that Michael would willingly take the mask off as well. He seems to hate it when he doesn't have it on. As we see in the original, he's very relatable. When Laurie takes his mask off, he stops everything to put it back on, because the entire point of his character is that his humanity is all but dead, replaced with the pure essence of evil. And the opening set of scenes is just as ridiculous as the setup for this sham of a film. There's a part where two security guards go down to the basement to check what they saw on a camera, and one of them dies while the other one, a total oaf, is eating food from a vending machine instead of helping his partner on the job. But then, when he hears a scream and goes to check out the situation, his partner is missing. What it ends up being is that Michael Myers cut off the partner's head, laid his body out perfectly flat along the ground, stopped the laundry, hid his head deep within the clothes, and then started the washing machine again. Oh, and he had time to hide again after this. Keep in mind, the vending machine is literal feet away from where this all happened, and the decapitated head wasn't the one screaming, so he did this in like 20 seconds, tops. The movie overall just feels cheap and lazy, and this problem isn't fixed whatsoever when Laurie Strode shows up once again. She's killed off very quickly and very disrespectfully. Not only can I seriously not believe that she would be idiotic enough to reach out over a ledge to Michael Myers and try to remove his mask to check if it's not him, but that doesn't even make sense for an idiot to do. She really doesn't have a good idea what he looks like without the mask, and if he was an innocent man, he could take the damn mask off himself. It's not rocket science. After this, though, we move on from Laurie or anything resembling a Halloween movie.
Instead, we get some sort of trashy Scream knockoff with a bunch of college students inside of the old Michael Myers house for an internet show or something, and they really show the true colors of this film early on. This is by far the sleaziest, most foul, grotesque, lazy, and disgusting movie in the franchise that I've seen, as pretty much all the characters are as bad as you can get with a horror movie. They're pretty stupid most of the time, but most of all just blend together and you want all of them to die. All of the male characters are absolute creeps, and nearly all of the female ones are ditzy and annoying. They're the most basic, trashy depictions of stereotypical douchebags that I've witnessed in a horror movie, heck, in any movie yet. None of them get developed whatsoever, and none of them are memorable. In fact, they're so awful that the opening with Laurie honestly just feels like a post-credits scene for H2O instead of part of this dumpster fire. Nothing about it feels like it should be part of this series, and though the concept of switching between the characters' cameras could make for a cool horror interactive experience or even better video game, as has been made clear by how popular certain games are, this movie switched between those and regular camera angles constantly, meaning that it adds absolutely nothing to the movie apart from some sort of in-movie audience that also serves very little purpose until, like, the absolute end. It honestly just feels unnecessary and annoying, since it's constantly going from high-quality camera shots to these terrible 144p webcams. The comedy in the movie is something that I simply cannot stand. It's the definition of cringeworthy. Not a single moment in this movie made me laugh, apart from the scene with the fake Michael meeting the real one, but even that drags on way too long. It honestly feels like some sort of strange love child between Scream, Blair Witch, and Halloween in the worst ways possible. But at least Scream was sometimes funny. I honestly thought that this would be better as a cheap parody of the franchise like Scary Movie is to Scream, but there's one pretty big difference between Scary Movie and Halloween Resurrection. Scary Movie is actually funny. If I have to list some positives, it would be that there are a few interesting bits of exploration into Michael's past, some alright jump scares, and the death scene of the redheaded girl is legitimately good. While the other deaths range from cool in concept but ridiculous in execution like the tripod one, to a shameless rehash like the ripoff of Bob's death from the original, this one I liked. Many scenes are foul and horrendous, especially the one in Judith's room, which is just one of the most god-awful insults to this franchise. And speaking of god-awful insults to this franchise, the final fight scenes are some of the worst I've ever witnessed in a horror motion picture. Busta Rhymes, because yes, he's in this movie for some reason and he's terrible, yet somehow still one of the best parts, kicks Michael and does karate moves on him in the kitchen, believes him to be dead, and then after the final girl has an ultra lame chainsaw fight with him, yes, I said the chainsaw fight was lame, Busta Rhymes kills Michael Myers by, oh god, he kills him by sticking an electrical cable right up against his dick. And we all know what he would have said if he was Walter White.
Mike, put your dick away, Mike.
I think it's brilliant how massively they screwed over the entire legacy of this series. Everything about this movie is a total and complete mess in every way. I didn't think it could be that bad. I was expecting a bad movie that would be at least somewhat enjoyable, but this movie is in fact boring and garbage. 1 out of 5.
Oh god, oh god, oh god. Michael's missing again. Please don't let him be dead. I don't know how I'm gonna bring him back this time. I'm nearly gone bankrupt for the damn guy. God. Where even is he? I just... Oh god. I guess this means he's sick. He never was the sharpest tool in the shed. He tended to use it to murder people. Oh well,
I guess this means he's probably gone to the hospital. Guess I better head off then. How do I get his attention, though? Oh, I got it. I can write him a note. There we go. That'll get him to come out and see me. While Resurrection was, ironically, the death of the franchise as we knew it at that time, there were actually 2 movies between that film and the 2018 reboot that I acknowledge the existence of. However, I do not plan to cover in this video. Rob Zombie directed a sort of remake/prequel mixture in 2007, followed by a sequel 2 years later that was not at all like the real Halloween 2. Like I said, I'm not going to watch or review these ones because I don't feel like that's necessary or would be interesting, enjoyable, compelling, etc. whatsoever, so instead I'll be skipping ahead to the reboot/requel directed by David Gordon Green in 2018. This is one of the biggest landmark titles in the new wave of horror requels, which are films that ignore the continuity of previous sequels and return to the storyline of either the original or an earlier successor to tell a new story. With how much of a disaster some of the later films in the franchise were, it made perfect sense for them to do this. So they did. In 1998. Yeah, H2O was also a requel, however they pulled the same move again 20 years later for the 40th anniversary. Though it might seem a bit redundant as a concept, I must admit that this movie does pretty much everything right. We get a return to the story of Laurie Strode in this movie as we focus on the pure trauma she's experienced. The acting provided by Jamie Lee Curtis is absolutely phenomenal in every way here, and she's legitimately the perfect culmination of what this character would logically be after all of this hardship. Her trauma, sadness, determination, and sheer vigor throughout the entire movie really carry it to another level. What really impressed me about this movie, both the first time I watched it and now, is how smart the characters are. Sure, they're mostly there to just die, but they never do anything outright stupid at all, and they put up a good fight against Michael throughout. At points, it even becomes sympathetic and sad, like in the bathroom scene, due to how great the acting of this victim in there is, and how you really feel bad for her. That scene in particular is a masterpiece, the way Michael towers over the door and drops something to the ground, eventually revealing them to be teeth. Oh my god, it's so good. We have a number of absolutely phenomenal horror scenes with jump scares made so much better due to the genius build-up behind them. It honestly reminds me of the jump scares from Sinister, and that's one of the best compliments I can give. From the bathroom scene to the mannequin jump scare, the fight at the front door of Laurie's house, the part with an incapacitated Michael who can wake up at any moment locked in the back of a car with one of our main characters, and especially the floodlight scene, which is legitimately one of the best scenes I've seen in a slasher, and it's followed by an awesome chase scene with the Shape Hunts Allison, one of the coolest songs in the Halloween franchise. All of the actors do a really good job too, making these characters even better. There are dumb moments with these people, such as the babysitter Vicky tripping on her socks somehow and receiving a very lame, disappointing death as a result. But outside of that one slip up, sorry, where was I? Oh yeah, outside of that slip up, there's not much to complain about. There are lots of great comedic moments, emotional highlights that explore Laurie and her tragic, distant relationship with her family, bits of brilliant world building that seem minor but play a role in the sequel, and of course some of the most fantastic horror scenes and jump scares of the entire series. If I had one complaint, it would be entirely focused on visuals. While the movie by no means looks bad, its focus on more intricate indoor areas and houses means that it feels like it lacks the Halloween charm of the original. The unique visual style built around the hospital in Halloween 2, or even the colorful, vibrant nighttime sets of its own sequel. Many people complain about Michael being humanized, but I think that's a very shallow attack against the film, considering how it really only uses that at the beginning to set up an overall story arc. I don't know if they'll properly emphasize this in Halloween Ends, but from this film and Halloween Kills, it feels like a major point of the story is how Michael Myers is more than a human, he's a legendary myth. Heck, in Halloween Kills, Laurie even says, the more he kills, the more he transcends, and this is a truly brilliant storyline in my view. Loomis's speech from the original film cannot be topped with pure imitation, but building a story that reflects how the series he's in itself was mishandled to showcase that Michael Myers should not be explained is genius. The sequels in this franchise, even if I love some of them, tried to explain Michael Myers, which is a really bad idea. However, the recent trilogy is building a plot that centers on its characters making the same mistake, and fatally so. It's sort of a scathing critique of all of these ridiculous attempts to extend the franchise that exists within by far the best attempt to extend it, and I love that. Phenomenal music, great pacing, fantastic acting, being a real treat for fans, memorable horror scenes, jokes, and characters both new and old, and a story with not only good, subtle social commentary, but also a commentary on the series it's in that further relates to its own handling of Michael all add up to make the best Halloween movie since the original, hands down. While the visuals leave a little bit to be desired, and there's one dumb scene, everything else is handled so brilliantly, and it's so respectful to fans while being original and not relying on fan service that I can't give it lower than what it deserves. Namely, a 5 out of 5.
Michael, where are you? Come on. God damn it. I should have known. I should have gone to some place where it's hospitals and money's involved. Maybe I should have done this back in America. Oh. Hello.
What the hell are you doing?
Oh my God, Michael. I finally found you.
Oh, I think you got me confused with another person.
What? Oh, come on, Michael. You always were a jokester. Although you never did talk. Whatever. People can change.
What the? I think I'm just gonna leave.
What? That lady wasn't Michael Myers? I mean, Michael Myers never talked, and he wore a completely different face, and he was a man. What the hell? People who don't, look anything like Michael Myers are not him? Huh?
After Halloween 2018, I was honestly surprised to learn that they were making another sequel, let alone a trilogy. I was happy at first that there would be more, but later concerned about how they'd explain Michael surviving being trapped in a burning house. Well, the explanation was dumb, yes, but it ended up being far from the most interesting, divisive aspect of Halloween Kills. It begins with Officer Hawkins, the guy who got stabbed in the neck and run over by a car in the last movie, giving a speech that leads into an absolutely incredible flashback sequence. This segment is jarring in the broader movie, but visual perfection and the recreation of Loomis is one of the most impressive uses of purely practical effects I've seen in a modern horror film. So it's clear from this scene showcasing his absolute incompetency with a gun that he'll be the main character of the film. Or wait, actually, no. The first real issue I have with this movie is that it feels so disjointed. It's a bunch of isolated scenes that work to varying degrees, but with no real protagonist to see it all through. We're meant to feel alienated from some of the characters, but not all, so this doesn't make thematic sense either. Overall, it's a movie that feels slightly lost in what it wants to accomplish, but that's far from the biggest issue that it has. It does do a fantastic job of world building, bringing back minor background characters and fleshing out smaller characters from the first movie in the series, creating a solid, fleshed out town of Haddonfield, which plays a role in the story. Tommy Doyle's speech in the bar does a great job of setting everyone up and building a mystery around how the town will handle the events seen in the 2018 film as they're gradually showcased to them. There are multiple epic, awesome action moments like Michael's brutal kills of the firefighters, all of which are extremely effective at making Michael a menacing, unstoppable killing machine. But at the same time, it's easy to notice from the very start that the characters are so dumb. From the firefighter who tries to stop Michael by spraying some water on him to, well, let me just show you. Yes, this is what I really hated about the movie. The characters are some of the most moronic in film history. It gets to the point of borderline self-parody, where characters just stand there and let Michael kill them when they could easily run, walk right up to him and try and shoot him instead of, oh, I don't know, doing it from a distance like guns were literally designed to do, and not even trying to finish the job after beating Michael down to the ground. I get it, people act more stupidly when they're in fear or anger, but it's taken to such an extreme that absolutely nothing is believable and serious scenes are turned into laughable ones. There are a lot of brilliant, beautiful shots, the score is incredible, and the pacing is so perfect that you'll never once be bored with all of its bombastic spectacle, but in terms of having a nuanced, well-written story, it's a total flop. It not only contains a cavalcade of brain-dead main characters when they're dealing with Michael, but the film also tries to reach for some complex social commentary and fails spectacularly. The idea of a mob mentality being created and exploring the effects that Michael has on everyone else in the town is nothing short of genius, but it's done by having them chant the same cringeworthy slogan dozens of times and chase down a man who looks nothing like goddamn Michael Myers until he kills himself? Another mental patient also escaped, which was set up by the last movie, but he looks more like Frank Reynolds than Michael Myers, and they all know what both of them look like in terms of physique and facial features, so it's simply insane and ridiculous to try and make us believe that an entire crowd of people will go this insane and crazy over this poor man walking around the hospital. I get the idea that they aren't very focused and wouldn't pay total attention to what the guy looks like, but they'd at least consider the fact that Michael Myers does not waddle around crowds of people. This guy doesn't look or act like Michael at all, so this explosive, impactful scene, which again is a great concept, becomes an insane, incoherent, ridiculous shouting match of a slogan and a totally idiotic, ham-fisted misfire. The finale also really fails to evoke such emotion, even though the camera work is immaculate. The logic behind it is non-existent, and though there are multiple good scenes building the family dynamic between the Strode women and the friendship between Laurie and Hawkins or Tommy, most of those family scenes really only developed a connection between Allison and Laurie, so killing off Karen at the end doesn't leave much of an impact at all, unfortunately. However, there are two heroes who dare to save this movie from being totally unworthy of existence. It's a super fun movie once again, and I'd say it's kind of like the multiverse of madness of this franchise in my opinion, due to how entertaining and creative some scenes are, but how moronic and laughable the writing is. But it's that fun mostly due to two characters. The legendary, the incredible, the two and only Big John and Little John. From their comedic acting to the irony of their knife sizes being the opposite of their nicknames, the way they absolutely terrify annoying prank-playing kids and are framed to look the same as they did in the picture by Michael after he kills them, Big John and Little John are what saved this movie for me, and I'd gladly watch a whole damn spin-off movie about them. Make it happen! And while you're at it, please pick up Minerals. I swear to God, it'll be the greatest show of all time. So overall, Kills is hilarious in many ways, intentionally and unintentionally, entertaining, and quite disappointing. I was let down by how dumb it was, but I can't deny how much fun it is despite all of that. If you want to turn your brain off and enjoy something both ironically and legitimately, then this definitely is not a bad pick. It's not a legitimately great movie that lived up to expectations at all, but it does enough things well in its own right. So, yeah, it's okay, I guess. but it's probably one of the most disappointing movies I've ever seen. 2.5 out of 5.
Man, where's Michael? I just can't even find him. Screw this. I'll find something else out. I'll go home. You know where to find me, Michael.
Hey, Mike. Face me first. Hello, Walter. What did you do, Walter? That isn't my name anymore. Wow. So it's really gone that far, huh? I won. I made him about 99.1% dead. But don't expect this to happen again, Walter. I'm not saving you anymore. We're done. And that's because I say we're done. What the hell just happened?
everyone, I hope you enjoyed this year's Halloween special, and make sure to check out the Breaking Bad review coming on November 18th. If you want to see what is going to happen with him next, check that video out. And for any more Halloween reviews, stay here on the channel because I have a feeling things aren't over just yet.